have one. You don't know where it is. Yes, let me see. Rolf there. All right. You almost get it. So just mention Sergio, and then people will associate the hair with the face with the person. It was a joke. Okay, thank you. I'll just ask everybody to introduce yourself so that those nice people here will know who you are and what you do for a living. Felice, please.
Okay. Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Felice Iacobellis. I'm the director of SIRHALO. SIRHALO is an interior design company specialized in hospitality design. So we are based here in Saigon and taking care for all kind of like hospitality projects.
Hello, my name is Sérgio Silva. I'm the founding and partner manager of SIRHALO Vietnam. We are architecture and urban design company from Portugal, already here 12 years.
Hi, my name's Matt Young. I'm the General Director of Group GSA. We're an integrated design company. We do architecture, interior, landscape and urban design. So we like to conceive things right from the very early stage all the way through to the taps and fixtures and the pool. Very happy to be here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rolf. I'm the head of design for Fusion Hotel Group. Well represented today, so I don't have to introduce the group anymore, I think. We had two speakers before already associated with my company. And I lead the in-house design department of our group.
Thank you, Rolf. Yes, we needed to make a sustainability and wellness point stronger, so we want Fusion to be everywhere. Okay, so I'll ask the first question because we're talking about luxury. So I'll ask the first question to my panelists. What is luxury to you? How would you define, how you will explain a developer what luxury could be in hospitality? Please, Felice.
Well, I think luxury is kind of like a very individual kind of like sentiment, and probably people have different definition of that. But for me, it is kind of like escape from the masses, escape from the city, go to a place where you kind of like not alone, but not kind of like surrounded by too many people, and where you can actually connect or reconnect with nature. So that's for me kind of like the definition of luxury.
And how this will enter into the design process. So if you have to guide a developer into this kind of luxury, what would you suggest them to look into?
Well, I mean, this type of luxury then kind of like, requires actually a lot of space and a lot of resources, and which is then probably not easy for most of the projects because of the restrictions. So as I said, I mean, there's kind of like different ways to define luxury. That's probably one of the more difficult one to actually put into reality.
Thank you. So luxury is not marble everywhere in the floor.
Yeah, I mean, well, as I said, people have different definitions of that, and I think that the typical definition of luxury, let's say, for maybe of so many people in Asia, is actually kind of like marble bathrooms and golden taps and so on. But I believe that this is something what is going to change. So I think that was kind of like the luxury of yesterday. But marble bathrooms become kind of like something kind of like more like day-to-day kind of like thing. So it's not like something what people don't have anymore. And what people nowadays want, or what people in the future want, is something what they actually cannot have in day-to-day life. And I think that I believe is kind of like more kind of like connecting with nature and being away from city life and a lot of people.
Thank you. Sergio, please, your opinion over luxury.
Well, for SIRHALO, the luxury is, we based it 3 main points. One is a holistic process with all entities that is involving in the project. The second one is the embrace or design the in the way that put the guest in the center of the project. For us, is a very luxury for us. It's not a blink design. And the third one is to welcome the local community and the sustainability of the place sense. For us, this is the luxury project.
Sorry, you say put the guest at the center of the project. What does it mean?
This means that when we are designing for the guest, for them to get the best experience with the operator as well. But for us, when we design, it's for the guest.
So to feel this luxury experience, they
Exactly.
must feel that this whole thing has been done for them.
Exactly.
Excellent. Maggie, please,
So,
take half of the panel time just to...
no, that's fine. Look, luxury is very personal. First and foremost, it's a personal experience understood by the guest. So I completely agree with, both Felice and Sergio. Basically, if you're coming from the countryside, luxury might be all that bling and all that density. If you're coming from the city where it's bright lights and, it's luxury just to feel the sand between your feet, between your toes. If you've got children, luxury might just be 2 days off from those damn kids. So to really understand luxury and to deliver it as a design, you have to understand the kind of people who are going to be coming to your hotel, who are going to be coming to your resort. And then you've got to design something around that experience. And I think that's where design and understanding your market comes into it, because you really need to understand what people are looking to escape to, what that heightened sense of living that they're looking for is, and try not to be everything to everyone in each resort. You can't do Felice's experience in the city, so don't. Look at some other kind of luxury. Look at some other kind of market. And if you're, in a resort, maybe not overload it. Maybe it's about simplifying everything and just having those beautiful views of the sunset. What WATG would talk about, just framing a view and just being in there, in that place, mindful, that wellness resort, that sort of spiritual experience. So it's no simple answer, but that's how you approach it.
And if a developer asks you to do a luxury project for him, would you ask him, okay, what kind of client are you expecting to have so that I'll design for this kind of...
It's going to be driven by both the client and the location of the resort. You can't, as an architect, I can't approach, or interior designer, landscape, I can't approach anything without seeing the site. Every site has a sense of place and specialness, and I think some of the earlier guests were talking about what's so impressive about Vietnam is we don't have to fake luxury. We don't have to fake experience. It's all here. So we have a very genuine, authentic ability to provide experiences, and it's a luxury to immerse yourself in those experiences.
Rolf, is Fusion a luxury brand or luxury experience?
It definitely is, of course it is. But indeed, as all my predecessors already mentioned, it is subjective. I mean, there is not one luxury, there's not one answer. You need to really know your market and know who you're doing it for in order to come up with a luxury resort. So indeed, you need to know the location, you need to know your potential client, you need to know your potential buyer very, very well in order to create something luxury. So overall, I guess none of us really gave an answer to the question other than it's all very subjective. I think probably a common denominator would be flawlessness. That's absolute luxury. So, and that's actually mainly operational, I would think. It's flawless service. So everything goes smooth, everything works well, everything happens in the wink of an eye. Something happens already before you even know that you want it, which is pretty much mostly on the shoulders of our operators, but as a designer, you have to facilitate that. And I think also just in the video presentation of WATG, it's mentioned quite well. Proper programming and a proper setup of the resort is done typically by the designer, which makes it possible for an operator to make it work and make it flawless. And I think that every single hotel or resort in the world which has the brand luxury will have at least will get close to that flawlessness level.
So there couldn't be a luxury if design is luxurious design but the service is not there, or the other way around. If beautiful service but the design is there. So I understand that both then need to match.
They have to go hand in hand, yes.
And you guys as a Fusion, how you help this process? Do you come into the designing process already to make sure that the operation will be okay? How do you work with the designer?
Well, the beauty of our organization is actually that we are an integrated company. So initially we have investment, operations, projects and design all in one company. So I'm literally sitting next to the operations team and the projects team. And there's a lot of interaction from the very, very early stages on. Sure, I mean, we need to plan it from the very beginning and we need to know what the operator wants. And I think that's also one of the issues that you see in a lot of projects worldwide, I would think, but especially in Vietnam, is that most of the decisions in the investment team are already made before the designer comes on board. And when a designer comes on board, it's too late in the process when the operator comes on board. So that should be really from the get-go in harmony and in sync in order to come to a proper luxury level.
Thank you, Major. Do you guys work a lot with the operator? Do you agree that the operator should come at earlier process or sometime they just not necessary?
Sorry, what was the...
Do you work a lot with international operator in your project? Do you want them to be part of the process of designing as well?
Absolutely, and in fact, if you work with an international operator, you have no choice but to work with them because they have brand standards that are very much set. I think the most important thing is a direction is decided quite early. Chopping and changing, I mean, I've been through several projects where we've changed the operator midway through, and it's an absolute nightmare because everybody approaches it differently, just like we approach luxury differently. Different operators run their resorts very, very differently. Some have an emphasis on food, some have an emphasis on service, some have an emphasis on space, the selfie moment, the Instagram moment, etc. And some just want everything pared back, you know, absolutely pared back. So the sooner the operator's chosen and the more integrated that team is, the earlier the operator's on, the earlier the architect's on, the landscape designer, the interior designer, it's about building a synergistic team. And I know that sounds like one of those buzzwords, but it's really important. Like if you've got a team that's fighting each other, the hotel, you will notice it when you walk in, that things clash. When the team are working well together, right to the MEP engineer, the air conditioning works perfectly, the temperature's great, you know, the air pressure's fantastic, the hotel has no acoustic problems. All these little things are highly technical. You know, there's no beams that are exposed in the middle because you've got a good engineer. All these highly technical things just disappear when it's done well. And I think the architect's greatest job is to make the architecture disappear and make it all about, you know, that user touch feel experience. If you're noticing my architecture, I've probably done something wrong.
Yeah, I can only add on to that. So I completely agree with Matt. So I think it's absolutely essential that the operator is kind of like involved at the very early stage of the project. So of course, as designers, we can design beautiful spaces and so on, but in the end, they work kind of like as a symbiosis. So the design and how it's basically operated really kind of like need to meld together. And for that, it's kind of like very important that we have the input from the operator and to kind of like make it happen and make it work.
And do you work with operator in some of your projects?
Almost on all, actually on all of the projects. And if there's a project where there's actually not an operator, then, and they come at a very later stage, then it becomes kind of like very complicated. Okay, finally, thank you.
For me, luxury was to get a drink on a stage, so
yes, thank you very much.
It's been a
personal
long day
service
for everybody.
We have more cocktail from Leisure Win from here, just to inform the panelists.
A lot of leisure in cocktail. Thank you.
Yes.
Sergio, please, do you work with operator as well? And then do you find them annoying sometime or they are just all perfect? I see from your eyes that you would like to say that, so just feel free. This is completely unscripted, this panel, yeah? We never truly prepare it, so bear with me that I put, yes, this is not prepared. Go with the flow of the wine soon.
No, well, I need to be polite. Now,
You don't, only with Radisson, which is
no, of course,
today and Archipelago.
Thank you. All stakeholders in a project try to push their part, but we don't see the operator as an enemy or a constraint for our project. So, as I said in the beginning, the holistic process is very important, and as much as soon as possible that we can involve everybody. I use it to say, for example, usually when we are doing a project, the landscape always come after. Should not. The landscape always should to start in the concept stage with the architect, because it's part of the project. We cannot put the landscape in the second or third stage. So, as soon as all stakeholders will be involved in project, more successful will be the project. This is the key.
So you need the full team there as soon as possible to be.
Of course, we have different paces, but in the end, should to be all process.
Rolf, do we need a, sorry.
No, I just want to add in, I mean, it can sometimes kind of like get a bit heated and a bit complicated. You have the designer who kind of like wants to kind of like bring in their design vision. The hotel owner who maybe has kind of like sometimes different ideas, and then there's the hotel operator. So everyone is basically has an opinion on the design, and that makes it sometimes kind of like a bit difficult. But on the other hand, this kind of like a challenging process can actually help the whole project, and has a chance to kind of like really make it something very special and unique.
Rolf, anything to add or?
Quickly, yeah, it's working, okay. Yeah, honestly, I mean, even working in the same place next to each other, it can be a headache. I mean, you have different interests also in a project, but in order to elevate a project to the next level, you need the synergy. You need to go through these stages and sit downs and talks about the design, about the flow, about the finishes. And you might have an opinion, but the operator needs to run the bloody place for I don't know how many years, so they have a proper say in it. It's that simple.
Would you go all the way to tell your client, change designer, we can't work with them?
Well, typically I'm the designer though.
You guys
no, but for sure. We have sub-consultants that I also work with and the operator works with. And I do give my advice, so be careful, guys. And it's a valid advice, of course. I mean, we have to be able to work with external consultants as well, and the operator side, the investment side as well. And it's.
And Matthew, will you go all the way to say change operator? They just don't know what they're doing.
I've never had to do that. I have suggested that a client who doesn't have an operator in mind find one, but I haven't ever suggested that an operator be removed. And that's probably lucky because we've been lucky enough to work with good operators. The operator is incredibly important, and we need to know as designers how we can facilitate how that hotel works. And I think it's interesting, you know, talking about having landscape first. Think about how you occupy a hotel. You come in, check into the lobby in the old way, which is now changing, and I enjoyed that hybrid space idea. But what's the thing you remember? You remember the sun going down and having, you know, drinks. And that's generally done in the landscape outside the room. And we spend all this time on the room, and people spend the least amount of time there. So what's more important, the room, or how easily is it to get from your room to the bar and watch that sun go down? Or what are the experiences along the way? And that's what the operator is going to be supplying. That's what the operator is going to be, you know, obsessing about, you know, who's going to meet you on the way, who's going to greet you, who's going to talk to you, all those kinds of things. These aren't physical things that the building actually does, but it can certainly facilitate and make it work a lot better if you have those adjacencies, if you have that flow.
Thank you. You want to add something or waiting? So just moving out of the topic of operator and things, looking into today, we talk about a lot of sustainability. Vietnam need more sustainability and blah, blah. We all know they will try to push it, but the reality is usually the approval is on a very high density project. And the vast majority of the project we see is we suggest to do less, we suggest to look at more, but the reality is they can do more, and it's very difficult to convince them to do less. Now, how do you play with this, being sustainable, but also play with the right density? Is there any formula that can work with the client, or any way that match can be done, sustainable and density? Rolf, you start, because it's a tough question, you need to guide us through that.
Sure. Well, let's first get something out of the way, because if you want to build 500 keys, high density is more sustainable for sure, because otherwise if you have only landed properties, the amount of actual footprint you create, the roads, the infrastructure you need is definitely less sustainable than a high rise. However, of course, the question is, do you need all these keys? That's the first question indeed that you're referring to, I think. And what happens a lot in Vietnam is indeed what has been also presented before, are these hybrid structures where it's a for sales product that later will be operated into a rental pool. And the market at this moment is currently that is quite easy to sell, so appealing to the buyer is quite easy. It's quick money, it's in the bag. Also, usually the local government wants to have high density because you're developing in areas that are underdeveloped. Big developments actually create the opportunity for these local provinces to build proper infrastructures. So it's also not just a demand from the developer to do, it's also a demand usually from the local government to come up with numbers for more jobs, better infrastructure for their township that they're responsible for. Coming back to the high density, I am indeed quite worried about the focus now on the buyer and not on the end user. I do definitely question the oversupply and also the kind of products that are now sometimes coming on the market. Is it going to have any appeal to the current market, and especially 10 years from now, what's going to be the appeal to tourists, domestic and international, to come to these places? And that's worrisome. So that's definitely a question that doesn't have a clear answer right now, because it's the local government, it's the developer, it's the buyer that generate this market, but the scars on the landscape are going to be permanent.
Thank you. Sergio, anything to add on that, on the scar on the landscape of Vietnam?
Yes.
I see you taking notes.
When we
We are
talk
all
about
excited.
density and massing, we need also to understand the result that will compromise the quality. So as architect, we are an actor, and we should to discuss with our client the way and showing maybe when we are increasing the density, for sure that we are going to lose quality versus sustainability. So I think we are actors in society that we need to educate also our clients and advise, special when we have these problems also in Europe. And you can bring some examples that we did wrong and we should not do it in Vietnam. So as an architect, we need also to educate our clients to understand that density is always a lack of quality.
So if a developer comes to you and say, I want a luxury resort, can you do it for me? You say yes, and then would say, I have 600 rooms in my place. Would you walk away from that project?
No.
Just say, no, I don't take it because it's just not sustainable.
No, we need to try to create something. So we work on that to not have this type of problems.
Mate,
It's a hugely loaded question, Mauro, as I knew you would. Density is often driven by the master plan. So I think you need to take a step back and look at the urban design, the master planning. Very much in Vietnam, you'll get a 1:500 master plan. It'll have a certain GFA, gross floor area, I think everybody knows, approved, and the client will have paid a price on that block of land based on the amount of developable area, and will need to return that. So that's number one. Like, if the master plan's wrong, it's almost too late to fix it, because unfortunately that's what the land's been purchased on the understanding of. So turning around and fixing it after the 1:500 approved and probably the land has changed hands is going to be extremely difficult. It's not impossible. Sometimes you can get the right product mix and break it down into a lighter touch. And you can do what Bill did, rent the rooms at 2,000 a night instead of 150 a night. The second thing is the same reason Sergio won't walk away. Just because we've got a nasty design challenge, that's actually when it's our time to stand up and do something. That's when we start looking at, bringing more air into the property, more light into the property, looking at integrating landscapes. Looking at things like, I was really impressed by the hybrid talk by Quo. Looking at things where we multi-use rooms, so we don't need to be so heavy-handed, and we can actually bring in something a bit more sustainable, a bit more usable year-round. and looking at different usage patterns. Not every hotel has to be the same, and I think there's this thought that every 300 key hotel looks like every other 300 key hotel, and it's just not true. They can occupy the same footprint, the same height, and it's still a remarkably different hotel. But it needs to be conceived of, thought about, and you need to have that team on board because you need that singular vision.
Felice, you on sustainability.
Yeah, I mean, not every developer actually is looking for like a luxury property. So if someone comes and wants kind of like a 800 or 900 key hotel, then they're maybe not necessarily after the luxury. So I mean, I'm not a big fan of these big hotels, but at the moment in Vietnam, it's kind of like still kind of like where the trend is going to. I think there's a lot of people in the last 20 years which didn't travel as much. I'm not talking about in Vietnam, but mainly, for example, also China and India. And there will be like a lot of masters on people which are traveling and which are going to travel more. And this one you have to put somewhere. I'm not really saying that this is kind of like the right way to go, but this is at the moment kind of like what developers have in their mind. I believe that in the future the trend kind of like will change, and that people who maybe today kind of like very happy in these 800 room hotels, in the future they will look for kind of like something more small, something more individual, something more individual. But for now, that's basically what we have with a lot of, let's say, people coming and becoming travelers.
If I may jump in, I definitely think there is and there will be room for these massive developments. They just need to be planned almost on a national level, I would say. These integrated resorts with a selection or a variety of typologies in hotels, with massive facilities like water parks, like safaris, that will work. That will work, but right now it's scattered all over the country, and sometimes you have these massive projects right next to these cute little resorts. It's mainly a planning issue on a very large scale. I think what's happening with some of the projects, what Vinpearl is doing, what Novaland's doing, what the Hotram Strip is doing, some of these projects will definitely have a long-lasting life and a successful life. There's room for that. But right now, sometimes when you enter Cam Ranh or enter a newly developed site, there's these massive, massive structures, not properly planned with their neighbors, next to very cute low-rise resorts, and that generates massive issues. That's never going to work. So, and that's a planning level that's currently not existent in Vietnam, and that really needs to come to being, where you sort of allocate areas. Okay, this is for low density, low footprint resorts and facilities, and here you can go high density with high facilities. That has to be planned on a higher level, and it's very difficult as a designer or as a developer even to do something about that.
Can I just jump in and say, sustainability isn't just about, and I think everyone knows this, about throwing green trees all over your building. There's a lot more to sustainability. Some of it's about efficiency. Sometimes the most sustainable thing you can do is in fact high density, because what you're doing is you're saving land space. If you do a big blown out, strung out resort that's only four stories high, that takes up a lot of land space. So, when we are looking at those master planning, if we look about those areas that maybe don't have the natural beauty, that maybe are, rocky outcrops or brownfield sites within a larger development. That's where we want to concentrate the density. And that decision in itself can be sustainable, because what that's doing is saving the green space, the streams, the unique experiences in their natural state. So I think we need to have a broader view of sustainability, not just as, oh, I'm living in a tent on the beach, I'm sustainable. Actually, you might be, impinging on virgin forest. So there does need to be a broader view, and we do need to have that ability to step back. And I agree, it needs to be at a much greater level, and that's where I think the urban design comes in. Now, then as we go into the smaller, we do the best with what we've got, which I think is what you're saying. So, but let's understand, sustainability is not just environmental too, it's economic. Every time we rebuild a hotel, we're destroying the environment anyway. So we want the hotels to survive. We want the operators to make money. We want the developers to make money. So that's sustainable as well. You need economic, you need social, you need environmental. All those things have to tie together, even governmental, which is the fourth arm, which is that development and urban planning that we're talking about.
Mauro, just to be gentle remind that we have now around 10 minutes left, and Lý Gia Vinh is so kind to start serving wine for people in the room. So please enjoy the 10 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Nyung, for your gentle reminder to us. So if any question here pop up in this panel, please feel free to just raise your hand. Otherwise, I'm just going to wrap up with asking my panelists here, how tough is to work in Vietnam with Vietnamese developer? Do you get the right brief from them? Do they help you to actually do the right things? Or would you suggest them to just change the way they work to get much better result out of that? Felice.
I think that very much depend on the developers. So there are developers who have kind of like a very clear idea on what product they want to develop. So they come up with like a very detailed brief. They often come together with the operator already, and that makes things kind of like very easy. But often developers
Sorry,
also...
Felice, but it does not kill your creativity too much?
No, the brief not necessary, because the brief is basically just kind of like listing down what the operator actually wants to do. So it's not about design, it's not necessarily about style or anything, it's really just about, okay, what do I want to have in terms of hard facts. But very often the projects are kind of like so much in a rush, and that developers maybe not even have time to actually prepare. And so it comes kind of like very quick, okay, next week we need to start, we have this project, 200 room hotel, let's get started. Yes, and we have to, okay, start what? So what we then do if there is no brief from the developers is that we actually create a brief for them. So we have over the years kind of like gained the experience on what actually a hotel needs, what the product needs, what the resort needs, and we kind of like bring it down on paper. So there's no design yet, it's really just kind of like listing down the facts and say, okay, how many rooms you want, what do you want in the room, what kind of like bar do you expect, what is about the, how many reception counters and so on. And we come back to the client before we even kind of like start one single line in terms of drawing and say, this is the brief which we prepared for you, so please review what you think, and that becomes the starting point, and that's really a key to actually make a design. Without that, I think you can't even start.
Please.
Let me tell you about the design brief, if I made a comparison. I'm not an architect, I'm a chef. You need also a recipe. You need to know your ingredients, even you are outdoor chef or something very special, signature. For us as architects, we need also design brief. Sometimes, because it's a new market in Vietnam, some clients, some developers, they don't have this expertise or a team to support. Is why Savills sometimes enter in a very well way to support them. Also, the architects should not only to receive, they should to be part of the brief design. And returning back again, all architects need a design brief, as the chef need a recipe. This is simple like that.
Portuguese food.
Yes.
Yeah.
How hard is it to work in Vietnam? It's a double-edged sword. Vietnam's an emerging market. I mean, if you want everything to be directed and well-known and a known quantity, I can go back and work in Australia and I can do one project a year and it's going to pretty much turn out like everybody thought it was going to turn out 2 years ago. If I want to exercise my creativity and I work with some clients who maybe are, for want of a better word, naive, new to the market, naivety can breed amazing creativity because they're not caught down in that sort of classical mess of like, this is how a hotel's done. You know, they're open to new ideas. So sometimes when we work with some of the bigger brands, our creativity, like you say, is somewhat limited. That said, there's always opportunities within that. It's really exciting. You know, the hotel's going to work. There's always great things to do. However, when you're working with a newer brand or a newer developer or even a newer site, there's great opportunities. So how hard is it to work? Yeah, sometimes we work with almost no brief. I've literally been told I've got 5 acres of land. So that's not a brief. It's like, well, it's my brief. Start. So, you know, these things do happen. And yeah, sometimes it's too hard, but sometimes it's an amazing opportunity. You just might walk onto that site and go, look, there's no brief. This is an absolute nightmare, but how can I say no to this piece of land? You know, how can I not be involved in this? How is I as a designer, or my team, I should say, as designers, not want to be involved and turn this, you know, extract the potential from this land in a sustainable, beautiful, experiential way? So, yeah, it's hard sometimes, but it's, you know, nothing worth having is not worth working hard for.
I agree with Matt on this one. I think, as many things in Vietnam, the development process is quite organic, I would call it. And there's definitely not always a clear brief in place. And the design process, the design will change a lot along the way in many steps. And as already mentioned, time is from the get-go already very limited. So going through these changes is not easy. But I think so there's benefits to it. I mean, you do have a lot of freedom. With no brief, you can suggest things that nobody might have ever thought about. At the same time, of course, the pressure on delivering a product with so many changes along the way in such a short timeline will do damage to the final product. So it has its pros and cons.
Thank you everybody. I think it's 6:30, so we are only, I think, 30 minutes late. It was 6 o'clock, we recover, I don't know. But thank you very much to all the panelists today. Thank you for that good discussion, and thanks for having a few drinks with me. I hope this will keep going for the whole Oscar night later on. Jung, do you close the conference or I do?
Okay, let me close it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Cheers to everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for your time today.
Rolfie doesn't like us to drink with.
I would like to say thank you again for our sponsor, our partner, for your contribution, and also everyone here for, you know, staying with us until now. So it's time for us to rebuild the hospitality, to reinvent the way we do business, and also to reconnect for the future. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.